Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for spending your hour with us today for our Wednesday webinar series. My name is Alice Fox, and I'm the Director of Talent Delivery at Talent Connections. I am joined by Susan Kent, Vice President of Career Spa, and John Palumbo, Director of Marketing for Talent Connections. A few housekeeping items today. This is a 1-hour recorded webinar. If you have any technical questions, please email John Palumbo at the email address you see on the screen. Participants will be muted throughout. However, you can use the question feature to submit questions. Please be aware that we do have a poll and it is very interactive. So throughout this presentation, so it's always great to get as many participants as possible and responses. So we will also have a question and answer time at the end of the presentation. We do have a poll, so be aware of that as well. This webinar is approved for 1 SHRM Professional Development Credit, and the activity code will be given at the conclusion of this webinar. Today, I am pleased to introduce Amy Norton. She is an executive coach and co-founder of Giant Southeast. Nothing thrills Amy more than seeing leaders and teams discovering capacity they didn't know they had. As an executive coach and consultant, Amy is incredibly passionate about healthy teams and healthy culture, particularly where rapid growth of business transition puts pressure on business community continuity and where people strategy is needed for leader readiness or retention. Amy is not a doctor dispensing prescriptions that cure your problems or a coder programming culture solutions. She is a practitioner who provides language, tools, and processes that empower people to lead themselves, which in turn creates healthy teams and healthy culture. Amy is based in Nashville, Tennessee, but has clients across the country. I know particularly for myself, since this is a crazy busy time of year, this is perfect timing for this webinar, and we're excited to hear more about how we can kind of find peace in this crazy time. So Amy, take it away. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alice, and good afternoon or good morning, depending on your time zone, to everybody joining us today. I'm delighted to be here. Alice, thanks for the invitation. And we were talking, getting ready for today, and I was saying how timely this conversation is for me. I'm talking with my clients a lot right now about this season of year end. It's a hectic time. And so today we're going to talk about a little framework to help put some objectivity and concreteness and tactical language around things that can feel very vague. And, it's kind of like sticking Jello to the wall, trying to talk about peace and love and those kinds of things. But today, I hope that you're going to have a moment to press pause, put your phones on do not disturb for this next hour, do something for yourself, put an oxygen mask on as a way to give yourself an understanding of where you are right now. So if we were going to put a pin on a map, we're going to get to understand where we are in terms of our sense of peace. And as we're getting going here, I want to set a little context for the framework and the words we're using. So we're talking about finding fulfillment and conquering chaos, and that's going to help us feel peace. And when I say the words peace and chaos, we may have some different things that come to mind. What means peace to me? What means chaos to me may mean something very different to you. I tend to think of peace kind of as an active word, not something that's just sort of a flatline neutral state. But I want to get you thinking about how you understand those words. So I'm going to show you a bit of a statistic, and then in a couple seconds we're going to do a group poll together that Alice has mentioned. So I'm really sort of disturbed by this idea that unhappiness globally is on the rise. That creates some cognitive dissonance for me, that is on the rise. And I think we're probably not surprised by that. There's a lot going on post-pandemic with our economy and with politics, and just a lot that could give us reason to understand why that statistic is. But I do think that we have agency as humans, and we are meaning-making people in general. And so I love the idea that we can take a moment today and really consider what we can do about this so that we're not feeling like a statistic. I'm thinking about common questions that we ask each other when we bump into each other at the grocery store or quick meetings with people. How are you? How's it going? What's going on? And our general response to that. We might not get into our deep fears, but maybe for you, I know this is true for me, I tend to answer with, I'm good, I'm great, I'm fine, I'm doing all right. And maybe that is true on some level, but sometimes it's not as true. And maybe I'm giving you an answer, but there's more stuff than that going on. And I kind of think about what we're talking about around our sense of peace and fulfillment, kind of like a bubble over our heads. We're all kind of walking around with a bubble over our heads, and there's a number in it. And whatever that number is going to impact maybe what your number is. So if Alice and I are colleagues working together and I'm coming in and I've got a really low number over my head, it's possible it might interfere with her sense of how she's doing. So as humans, we have an opportunity to really think about us as a way to be a good neighbor. And I like thinking about that. I want to show you, or actually, before I show you the framework, I want to do a quick poll. So here's what we're going to do. I want to ask you, as Alice is bringing up this question, to consider how we think about the words peace and chaos. So I'm going to talk about this while you have a chance to look at the questions and the answers, but take a minute to put your answer in here. How do you best understand peace? Is it something, when I say the word, what is peace to you? Do you understand it as inner calm and serenity? Is it freedom from conflict? Maybe the absence of disturbance? Maybe all of those things. Maybe your definition doesn't even appear on this list. So, what's the closest answer you can give for that? And then we'll do the same thing for the synonym, a synonym for peace, or anonym rather, anonym for peace. What statement best describes how you understand chaos? Is it disorder and confusion? Is it lack of organization, instability, all of the above, or none of the above? And we'll give you just a second so you can get that answer. And then when Alice feels like we've got good critical mass there, she'll close the poll. But I'm thinking, Alice, yeah, I hear you wanting to break in.
Well, I was just going to say that, yeah, make sure all the participants realize there's two questions involved. The peace one is at the top, and then scroll down to see the second one. When I looked at these, I got to say, Amy, they were very interesting because I would have said peace is about inner calm and serenity, but then I'm like, well, it is a freedom from conflict. It is also absence of disturbance. So it kind of is all of those above.
Mhm.
For me, I think of with peace possibly. And then when I think about the chaos, I would say chaos is a kind of all of the above too. Chaos is order, about disorder and confusion and lack of organization, and about instability. So for me, with both of these, I would say they're both of them are all of above, and we actually have 100%. So let me show you what our statistics are here, what everybody
Awesome.
said. Yeah.
Oh, wow, this is great. So it looks like 100% of our group is saying peace is about inner calm and serenity. I love that. I love that we've got some common understanding of that word. And I'm thinking about what Alice just said, and I think I'm in your camp, Alice. I think it could be a lot of those things. And it is often about common serenity, but for me, it also can be about freedom from conflict or keeping the peace. You know, if there's a lot of loud noise or yelling and screaming, it might not feel peaceful to my introvert self. Are you able to scroll down and let's see what the results were for question two?
Yeah, I think do you see it there? There's question two. Which of the following
Um,
statements do you see that one?
I see question two, but I don't see an answer. What are you seeing?
It says chaos is about the one person, 20% said chaos is about instability, and
Mhm.
then 80% said that all of the above.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you right, even though I can't see it exactly, the majority of people where chaos is concerned says it's about all the things, not just one. Yeah.
Yes, chaos is about instability and then all of the above. So kind of
Okay.
both.
Yeah. So if we think about instability versus calm and serenity, those are some oppositional things. And I thank you for participating, Alice, and for everybody listening, because how you're looking at the words peace and chaos helps you interact with what we're about to dive into a little more. So it's that's the method behind the madness. So when we think about this peace business being all of those things, or if you're thinking about it about calm and serenity, how calm and serene do you feel today? And instead of just sticking my thumb in the air to decide which way the wind's blowing, I want to think about what are some concrete ways I can understand that. Same thing with chaos. If I'm considering it uh, in the ways that we are, what concretely can we do to unpack that a little bit? So I am going to now continue on with our presentation now that we've done that poll. This is the framework that we're going to be working with today. So you can see it's just a very simple visual. Neurolinguistic tools are great in my world because they pack a punch. It's a simple thing to look at. And if we can simplify complexity, that's a really good thing. We live in a really, really complex world. And so today, what we're going to do is give you some categories that may connect to reasons why you may not be feeling 100% at peace. And let me just say, too, having a healthy peace index is not about having 100% and staying there all the time. We are dynamic people. Life is complex and there are ups and downs. So, the same way that it's helpful for me to know what my blood pressure and my cholesterol are, I can take a pulse check literally on what my peace index is. And I can understand sort of overall what it is and where that number is, but I can also get a gauge on why it may be where it is and what the contributing factors are that help me get that aggregate score. So we are going to be doing a little math today. I was not a math major. Don't worry. This will not be complex calculus, but we are going to do just a little bit of a calculation to gauge where we are on this peace index. And what I like to think about is the idea that, you know, I may have some turbulence right now, but my turbulence doesn't need to affect your peace and vice versa. Young Pueblo is, I think, an internet influencer. So this is not a Stoic philosopher quote, but I really do like these words. Protecting your peace is easier when you don't take other people's turbulence personally. So if I can take care of the things that I can control and understand how I can influence my surroundings and let go of the things I don't have control over, my peace index is actually going to go up immediately with that understanding. So here's what I'm going to want us to do. We're going to walk through a little bit of an assessment, and this is your sense, your understanding of where you are in terms of your personal peace. So you're going to get to give yourself a score from 1 to 100 in each area. And then we're going to add and divide by 5 for the overall peace index score. There are no right and wrong answers here. And the invitation is for us to be curious. So I want to be curious about where I am right now and not feel that I have to solve anything, and not feel that I need to be judgmental about anything. This is also not about comparing. So if you happen to be doing this webinar with a buddy and your buddy's peace index ends up being 95, great, let's celebrate that. If yours is really low, if it's under 50%, that is okay. Comparisons are the thief of joy. So what we want to do is really just be curious about ourselves. So we're going to start with the purpose part of the peace index. You'll see there's purpose, people, place, personal health, and provision. So let's begin with purpose. Now, there are lots of ways to think about purpose. And when I think about purpose, it's really what it is you wake up every day and engage yourself in that you're good at and the world needs. I think somebody said somewhere that your purpose is where your gifts and talents and desires connect with what's needed in the world. And it's important to understand what your sense of purpose is. Sometimes my sense of purpose feels really high, and sometimes I have had seasons where it's felt really low. And when it's been low, I might feel off. I might not feel quite that sense of contentment. So there's some ways that we can think about how to understand our purpose. What do you love? What are you good at? What does the world need that you're good at? Does the world need what you're good at? Can you be paid for what you're good at? So I'm going to give you just a really a quiet moment to think about that for a second and share a little bit about myself. And Alice, you'll get to play here too. So what I'm getting to do today, I really do love. And I think I've built a 10-year practice doing coaching and feel like I've gotten pretty good at it. So it definitely connects with my sense of purpose. I feel fulfilled doing the work that I do. Years ago, if you'd met me probably 15 years ago, I would not have said that. So there is a difference now in what I'm doing versus what I was doing a long time ago. Alice, how about you? What's your sense of purpose right now?
Yeah, this is a great question. I'm actually in a quest for this right now, mainly because, I'm a somewhat recent empty nester, and my focus has been so much on, your kids' activities, your kids being volunteer at school, being the team mom, the PTA president, whatever that is. And so while I definitely do find purpose in my job in terms of what I do, I love matching up, candidates to find their dream job and for clients to find their next HR leader or person. I just actually received an awesome email from someone that we just recently placed in a nonprofit organization, and it filled my cup for sure. But in terms of trying to find that purpose of what I, just because of my life circumstance with my kids, has changed. And so I'm kind of on a
Ah,
quest right now.
right. So I love that you're adding stuff beyond work because we are way more than our jobs. And so
Yes.
purpose for me too has been mothering. I've got 24, 27-year-olds who are out of the nest, and it is bumpy when that role changes. They're off into their adult lives, and I'm still mom, but it's different. My what is my purpose as a mom now? So there's some big existential questions that can relate to this. So thank you. I'm so glad you said that. So, for our audience, this is a moment for you to think through what is your peace index in the purpose category. And again, you're just giving it a quick number, 1 through 100. And 100 would be probably 0 and 100 are not really realistic. We're going to be somewhere in between those areas. And I would say that a 100 is, or 90, somewhere between 75 and 90. That's a really great score on the peace index. Maybe we are at 100 at moments, but that's probably a moment. It's not something that's necessarily sustainable. So we do want to look at this realistically. I can have very idealistic ways of looking at life. So it's helpful for me to know I'm not really aiming for 100 here, but somewhere between, I would even 65, 70 up to 90, 95. That's a really great high peace index in any of these categories. As a corollary to that, anything that's below 50 is something that we really want to pay attention to. I don't want to say the word danger zone, but I kind of want to say the danger zone. And I actually am going to share my peace index, and one of mine is below 50. So I want to be real about that. Is it trending up? Is it trending down? Those are some ways we can look at these buckets as we go through and understand, get a sense of where we really are. It is very normal for things to trend up and down. So if I understand the number and is it going up or down, then I can also begin to think about what do I want to do about that. All right, so hopefully you have a little bit of a sense there of your purpose score. Let's talk about what this means. So if we feel a sense of purpose and we found it, I can really run with that. And this is a little bit of a provocative statement. All of us have a purpose, some of us find it. It can feel a little scary if I don't feel like I know what my purpose is, and that's okay too. Emotions are actually not dangerous. They are really good information. So if you find yourself feeling your pace of your heart quicken as we're talking about that, that's really okay. Not anything wrong with feeling a little heart flutter considering some important things. All right, let's move on to the next bucket. Normally when I do this, we take a lot of time to do a lot of Q&A. So I'm trusting that you all are doing some good thought work here. And Alice and I will keep talking about where we are at this. So people is the next category. And our people index is all of our relationships. And there may be work or friends or family or a combination of all those things. But all of those relationships have an impact on our sense of peace. And we can think about how we can calculate our peace assessment with a few data points. And here's some thoughts here. So you could mentally think of the top 5 or 10 people that you spend most of your time with. without overthinking it, how do you feel about those relationships? What's the quality of the relationship with those people, 1 to 100? You can total those percentages and come up with a score for your people index. And if it's really low, you can burn the list. You don't have to tell anybody today how you're feeling about all those relationships. It's really good for you to know, though, how you're feeling. So here's a slide showing some random person's key relationships and where they're feeling. So you can see that if this were me, that I have a really high score with Sarah and a little bit lower score with Tony, and overall, that's going to give me a bit of a sense of where I am. Um, Me personally, I've got, if I'm thinking about the buckets of relationships, I have this same kind of thing going on too. I have some that are better and feeling more peaceful, more aligned, more connected, and some that are not as much. And I can see where the work is if I'm thinking about myself. Alice, what about you?
Yeah, this is a great visual also. This my people, because I'm like, I could put my people into each of these little circles, I guess, and go, oh, yeah, I really do, my Sarah, or who is my Tony, kind of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
this is something, and I will say this is something that I've really tried to work on, especially when your friend groups are around your kids with certain things, either, and one of those things goes away, and then you're kind of reshuffling these numbers for sure. So I do try to reach out. I am the organizer of the group for sure. So I do try to organize times to be with our friends. But this graphic definitely resonates with me for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. So while we're continuing to talk a little bit, I want everybody to be calculating what your peace index is. So if you want to use those guidelines around, think of those top 5 or 10, how would you rank each person on that scale of 1 to 100? What kind of number would you give them to think about your overall score? I'm thinking about a bit of a turbulent season I had in my business last year. I've got amazing partners that feel like brothers to me, and we have really close relationships with our spouses. But business was hard last year. I think it was hard for a lot of people. And there were some moments where Dan and Brandon and I had some bumpiness, and those relationships felt they were not unhealthy, but we were just having some trouble communicating and trouble getting clarity about how we needed to align. And my peace index as it related to work was a little lower. And it was not in a scary place, but if I look back retrospectively at last year, I can see back in, I don't know, February, March, April, why it felt bumpy, because we were having a hard time, and it was connected to one of the things we'll talk about soon, which is provision. So, all right, let's keep moving. I like this thought. Don't let somebody else's lack of peace affect your level of peace. And that's one of those things for me that's easier said than done. I don't know about you, Alice, but it's hard for me to not be impacted by somebody else's lack of peace. How
That's a
about
good
you?
one for sure. I've definitely screenshotted that because,
Yeah.
yeah, that
Yeah,
definitely could be. It's also like the saying that says, your lack of planning does not constitute an emergency on my part. However, I am the fixer, so if it is emergency, I try to step in. So
right. Same. And okay, so now we're going to make this one step harder. If we're not letting somebody else's peace affect our level of peace, how can we not let our lack of peace negatively impact other people? So, who that tells Amy I need to own my stuff. I really need to understand what's going on with me so I can manage myself and manage my emotions and manage how I'm dealing with things. So that ratchets up the responsibility level, I think, a little bit for me. All right, let's keep going. All right, now we're going to talk about place. So, place is literally all the places that your life plays out. So, I live in Nashville, and I love my neighborhood, and I live in a house. This is my home office in my house, and I redid it to make it super office-like, and I have meetings in here, so that feels really great. I love the city. I love my neighborhood. What I haven't loved lately is my husband and I did a long renovation on another part of our house and had to move out and move back in. And when you talk about chaos, it was utter chaos for months. And we're almost to the end of that, but it's still feeling a little, there's just still some bumpiness there related to place. So, um, when we look at my whole assessment, you'll see that that one is one that's a little bit lower. The end is in sight, so I think it's going to be trending up, but my home really matters to me. So, as we're thinking about your place assessment and how you want to rate it, here's some things you can think about. How happy are you with the physical location where you live and work? How about, does your house fit you forever, or is it just for a season? The apartment I was in this time last year was definitely just for a season because it was about as big as this coffee cup right here. And I don't need a mansion, but I definitely needed a little more space than I was in last year. So place index last year was really low. How peaceful is your house? That might, for me, connect to my relationships, or the number of workers and subcontractors that still are in and out. So some days it's not very high if I have lots of noise that keeps me from being able to work comfortably. Um, and how about, do you have a place to recharge and think in your house? And yeah, those are lots of good things to be thinking about. Alice, what about place for you? I think you may have a home office too, if I'm
I
remembering right.
do. Yep. I have a home office. I spend a lot of time in my home because I do work 100% at home when I'm not out at clients. I will say, when you brought it up about a little bit of chaos, we were in the middle of doing a little home renovation too, but I love to travel, but I love to come home. And so it is it's a high number for me because I'm definitely I do like my home and I try to make it a peaceful place and a grounding place
Yeah,
for myself and our family for sure.
same. I love that. So, audience, I hope you're calculating what your score is. So be thinking about what you would assign to this today. And it might be different last year versus 6 months from now. But right now, in this present moment, what is your index for place? Give yourself a second to write that down, and we'll keep moving. All right. We're going to move into personal health, and this is also an important one. So, when I'm thinking about personal health, I'm thinking about mind, body, spirit, to put it in some buckets. So, personal health can range across a lot of different categories, but if I'm thinking about the health of my mind, the health of my body, and the health of my soul, those are three good ways to think about it. And but let's talk about body for a second. So physical health, you think about, your my annual checkup that I will have with my internal medicine physician in a month or so, and I'll find out, is my cholesterol better this year than it was last year? Those are important things. And am I doing the right things to keep my physical body in the right place? And sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes the chocolate chip cookie is the right thing to make me feel better. May not be good for my cholesterol, but it definitely it's a balance of things, I think. So, are you doing the right things that keep your body in a healthy place? And do you have the routines and the regimens and the just sort of daily schedule that helps support that, is a way to think about it. When I'm thinking about mind, I'm somebody who loves to learn. And so if I don't have new, interesting books to read, people to talk to, podcasts to listen to, ways to challenge how I'm thinking about things, my mental health doesn't feel as high. That score wouldn't feel quite as high as it could. I also think about things like, where am I feeling anxious or feeling low? Is my mood okay? We think about those kind of mental health words that are important. So it's good to have a sense of where I am right now. Spiritual health, it can have a religious component. Really, the very, I think, broad way to think about this is, how am I understanding where I am in relation to the bigness of the world? So, are there things that am I getting out in nature to really consider, just the vastness of our world and how I fit into that? And there are many people who have spiritual practices that help support that. So, this is not getting on any kind of soapbox about religion, but mind, body, spirit, if we think about the interconnectedness of those three concepts, those become important considerations as it relates to personal health. If my body is really healthy, but my mental or spiritual health are really off, that score is going to be lower. And I think it's just good to ask that question. How am I doing in these categories? Right now, it's year end. Work season is always pretty stressful mentally for me, and I can skip like I did this morning, did not go for my walk or my exercise. And so I shouldn't be surprised if I don't sleep as well tonight. And I shouldn't be surprised tomorrow if I feel not quite as rested. So there are things that I can do to help that stay high. Alice, how about you for personal health? How are you understanding this one?
Yeah, this one is a pretty high number for me as
Mhm.
well. Physical, I in mind, I would say make that higher up for me. I definitely do prioritize some sort of workout every day. If and make that a priority if it means getting up earlier in the morning or doing something. So I definitely do that. I have made a couple changes in spiritual health, just location, and so some of that comes. It's a little more tumultuous for me and trying to find balance there. But yes, I would say this is a higher number for me too, just because I do prioritize and I can. In with age does not come a lot of fun things, but wisdom is maybe one of them. And so
Yeah.
I've learned what some of my triggers are that I do need to step back and I do take that time. So where when I was younger, I probably would not have done that. So
That's really good. And I love that you're talking about the benefits of aging there. I'm in that season where I have a power surge every 5 minutes. So it's
yes,
wisdom is what do I do to keep that from being such a difficult thing? So I thank
yes,
you for sharing that.
yeah.
All right. So hopefully everybody has calculated your personal health assessment. And if any of this is moving too fast for you, just circle it. Come back to it later today or tomorrow. I'm going to talk about some ways you can talk about this with the people that are closest to you. So you're going to have some opportunity to think about how to apply all this. So don't feel pressure if it's hard to come up with a number right now. And just a reminder, we're being curious. We're being very curious about what's possible here. All right. So let's look at this big idea. This is where I like to ask you, is there any place you need to trade up? So I'll be able to show you with my whole piece index where I do need to trade up in this category, especially as it relates to physical health and sleep and how that's affecting other parts of my world. So is there any place that you need to trade up right now? Is there something simple that you could do if this ends up being a lower score for you? One small thing that maybe would help you get that trend line going in a different direction? Good question to wrestle with. Don't have to have an answer right now. All right, coming into our last category, we're going to talk about provision. And provision, very simply, is about the money that's coming in to help us live our lives. So we think about provisions in the pantry. Do we have enough food? Do we have the right food? And we can think about our financial situation in that same way. So as we think about the provision assessment, how do you feel about what you're currently earning from your work? Does it feel like you're making the money that supports your life? And do you have the resources needed to do what you desire to do in life? And I do want to say here, thinking about provision, we have wants and we have needs, and I would love to be a billionaire and not have to worry about my property tax bill or whatever it is. And there's also need. So what is it that I need? And a lot of times what I need, if I get really honest with myself, may be different to want. So again, this is an existential, esoteric kind of question, but there have been seasons where I mentioned last year our business had a bit more struggle. So the provision question was real. And what do I do about that? I can understand that my peace index last year may have been a little lower because this was something that felt more like a question mark, where the year before I felt like I had a better sense of what was going to happen. So those are good questions to ask. Lastly, as you're thinking about your own personal provision index score, how hopeful are you about your future provisions in light of your current reality? And I'm excited that 25 seems like it's going to be starting out to be a better year from that prospect. But that doesn't mean I don't need to be thoughtful about it, of course. But in terms of my sense of peace about it, I don't feel turbulent. I don't feel chaotic. So that score is definitely a little better for me for next year. Alice, what is your satisfaction in general with, do you care to comment on this? And feel free to say no.
Yeah,
Just
no,
get
I
into
mean, I
personal.
think what you say about there's a difference between a want and a need for
Mhm.
sure. I have absolutely everything I need in this area, and feel so blessed and so grateful for everything I have. Our Because of that empty nest status and getting one person each little time, off the payroll, and
The pay raise.
I know I get a little pay
Yes,
raise for
yes,
sure.
I celebrate that
So
for you.
yes, so that does help for sure. But yeah, I definitely am very blessed with everything that I have and feel so fortunate. And
Love it.
so that's a high number for me too.
I love it. Well, as you all are calculating your numbers, think too about the tools and resources you have to navigate. One thing I realized not too long ago is that I needed a better way to deal with my budget. And I can make up a lot of stories that take me to a really negative place about whatever is in the bank account and not a good enough understanding of how to manage it. So, part of my piece, having a little bit better forecast for the next year helps. But actually, the real reason why my peace index on the provision level is higher is because I'm dealing with it better. Good or bad, I have a better process for thinking about how to manage and navigate the financial piece of my life. And I'm 57. I could have figured this out years ago. That sounds like judgment. I'm so glad I know now. So glad that I have a better way to think about that now. So hopefully that's not oversharing, but that is just my reality. I didn't have the greatest method for dealing with it, and I feel so much more at peace knowing that my process is working. So hopefully that's helpful to share. All right. You've got a personal number there, and in a second, we're going to put it all together. As you're thinking about this a little more, I want to put a couple of ideas in front of you. So, to mature is the ability to develop inner peace where there may be little external peace. So, if I think about my situation last year where the business landscape was changing and it did feel turbulent, what does Amy do to find inner peace when I can't do anything about what's going on with the economic situation and the reality of what's happening with potential projects and contracts and whatnot? But I can think about what I can do to help with my own inner peace. It is important to identify where there isn't peace and why there isn't peace. And the thing I love the most about the conversation we're having today is that I might feel restless or chaos or whatever the word would be. And now I've got some ways to ask my questions about why. Where is it coming from, the sense of unease that I'm having? And I can figure it out a little better now with this language. I also really love that the peace index helps us manage our emotions so that others don't have to manage our emotions, because it's really not Alice's job, if she's my sister or my friend or my colleague, to manage my emotions. That's really on me to do that. Right, Alice? We have to take care of that ourselves.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right. So here's where we're going to put it all together. I want you to think for just a second, and I'm going to share mine while you think about this. So you can do two things at once. You can listen to what I'm going to share, but I want you thinking about your overall score and what your lowest area is, and if there's anything that you can do today to impact that lowest area. And this may be something that you want to circle and think about, make a note about, that I really want to think about that lowest area, and is there something I can do to adjust a little bit? And I like to think about this like I'm navigating a ship. If I'm a sailor on a sailboat and my course is off a little bit, I don't make huge course corrections to get back on track. Sometimes it's just 1 degree. Sometimes it's just one small thing, maybe even reframing how I'm looking at something that allows me to get back on course. So we're not talking about system change necessarily, but maybe just understanding something I can do today that makes it better. Also, understanding the leading indicator of those 5 categories is really helpful, because if your leading indicator is down, that is going to impact all of your indicators. So we are going to do a little bit of a look at that. Um, Leading indicator, as we do and when we're looking at business metrics, is that area in our peace index that has the most weight. It's the most important one that will affect the others. So be thinking about, of those 5, which is the most important for you. So here's a little bit of a glance at my current state on peace index. People is my leading indicator. If I'm thinking about those 5, people is the most important one. And I'll just kind of talk through this. And Alice, feel free to ask me any questions, or if you've got some things you want to share, we'll just dialogue about this a minute while people are considering their own personal current reality with this peace index. So purpose is really high. I've talked about that a little bit and talked about my home renovation, being finished, but it doesn't feel super high yet, but I can tell that it's on the way up. So I'm giving purpose a 90, place a 60. Provision feels better, but really what's making that score higher in a good, healthy range is my ability to understand it better. So that feels like a major win. People is 60, and I think there's just a variety of reasons why it might be 60, and we're all going to have our own personal reasons for that. But I definitely feel like that's trending up, and I'm considering my role in that, and what does healthy look like. So those are some questions I'm asking myself there. Personal health is my low one. You can see that it's a 45, and that's, hey, Amy, let's pay attention to this. So why is my personal health index score lower? I'm not sleeping really well right now. I am in that window with, hormonal changes and stress, home renovation, all those kinds of things, work stress. So I think probably the sleep part is why my personal health feels a lot lower. And if I'm really thinking about what I need to do, I know the things to do. I don't need to be on my phone before I go to bed. So phone does not need to be by my bed. I need to read a book. I need to have exercise today. I need to do the things that help me mentally, spiritually get grounded in reality and not be, off in outer space orbiting in a place of anxiety. So I know there's some real things that work when I do it. And maybe you all can be my accountability partners here. That I'm going to make sure I exercise today. I'm going to make sure I don't have my phone next to my bed when I go to sleep tonight. So Alice, what do you have to say to all that? Was that oversharing, or is that helpful to
No,
hear?
not at all. And it's interesting when I saw your number, especially after we kind of talked through it. I would say it would be interesting to, we're definitely going to be sending this out, and people can, to take this again, throughout the year, because I'm sure people's ebb and flow for sure based on where they are. If you're like you, to your point, if your house is under construction or in disarray or something's going on, that could, definitely affect your number. If you have a health issue or something, or you are having money issues or a provision of some sort. So I can see how, depending on what's going on in your life around you, that you would be that in any of these numbers could ebb and flow for sure. So that's just interesting to see. I'm sure it would be interesting to take this in 6 months and see where we are or something each,
Yeah.
and I believe you have actually even mentioned that you've taken it just as a pulse kind of where you are at that time.
Yeah, I actually have a reminder on my phone. And once a quarter, I get a prompt, what's your peace index, Amy? And I will have some conversation with my husband and our kids and my business colleagues. That is a practice that I've gotten into. And what it does is help me remember that I do have some ability to help myself, regardless of external circumstances. And I guess that's part of the reason why I'm being vulnerable and sharing my real piece. I could have made some of this stuff up. Oh, I'm good in every category, but that does not feel honest. That doesn't feel like integrity. And as a coach, I really value doing the work that I invite my clients to do. So I hope that's helpful to know that I'm giving you the real stuff here. I'm not giving you any BS around what my peace index score is. And I want to encourage you that whatever your numbers are, you have some ability to do something about that. So I want to show you this framework here, and we're going to move into some questions and answers in a minute. I've got a couple more things I want to share to get to the question and answer place, but there are a few things that I have full control over and decision making authority over, a whole lot more that I have opportunity to influence, but there's some stuff in that red zone that I have zero control over. And that's the part that really helps Amy Norton when I'm thinking about my peace index. So if my people score is low because I'm feeling like I've got to control what my kids may or may not be doing, I'm actually not going to be able to have personal peace because I'm thinking about stuff that they have to work on. So I want to always challenge myself to think about the stuff that I really have control over. And I really do have control. I can make a choice not to look at my phone. I might need to develop a habit around that and have some different practices to support a different pattern of behavior. But I really can choose not to look at Instagram at 10 o'clock at night or email, for heaven's sake. So that is definitely something I have full control over. And if I focus on that, there's some really good things that can happen there. So I don't like that my health score is 45, but I don't feel resigned and I don't feel that that's permanent because I know there's some things I can do about that. So I say that to you today, wherever you are right now, thinking about your people, your purpose, your provision, your personal health, your place. It's okay. Whatever that is, there are going to be some things that you can do. And some of the stuff that's out of your control, we need to be able to let that go. We need to practice that. So I say that with a lot of care because I think that's helpful for us to be able to think that way. Alice, any thoughts there for you?
Yeah, this is definitely true. I mean, there are things that you can't, it goes back to the thing, the no control. You just don't let other people's lack of peace,
Hmm.
affect your peace. But I see it as, and one thing that I definitely wrote down was that, especially we're at the end of the year, whether you do a New Year's resolution or just kind of, I think it's natural to start the year and say something that I think this is a great visual to see, oh, you know what? That is a little lower for me. So here's an exercise that I can at least start from here, instead of saying I'm going to run a marathon by, February or something. It's going to be,
Yeah.
that I know this, I can see in black and white from this exercise what something was that was a little lower for me, that I'll definitely start off the year and make that a priority for 2025 going forward, that I will definitely start with that one first.
Thank you. That's really awesome. I think this would be a great place to see what questions people have. I have several more planned slides, but I'd prefer to hear if people have some questions, if that's okay. And I will have some links to resources that I can share as we kind of close out in a minute. But are there any questions people are asking?
At the moment, I don't. Let's see if now that we've opened it up, though, let's see if anybody has a question. I know a couple people have said that they had to drop off. They had some meetings, so we had a bigger crowd, and now they've kind of dropped off as we're getting it to the end of the lunch hour here. But yeah, if anybody who is on has a question, would love to have that. One of the questions maybe is in terms of ways that we can, um, you know, make sure, when you see something, what would you say is your first way to, when you see something's a little lower, what would you say is a good thing to do right off the bat to try to up one section? I know we talked about it's going to depend on
Mhm.
which one it is, but what would you say is a good thing to do to build up that one weaker area?
Great question. So I'm going to show this framework here, and this is about, excuse me, there it is, called the Five Circles of Influence, and it's really about being intentional to understand where the issue is. So if I see that a particular part of my score is low, and I can connect that to my family or my team or myself, then that gives me the starting point. So my personal health around sleep, that's a me issue. That's something that I've got to think about for myself. As it relates to maybe an issue at home that is affecting my place score, maybe I need to talk to my contractor about making sure his workers are not showing up at 6 a.m. on a Saturday, because that's definitely going to interrupt my coffee and my peace. So, with my team, maybe there's some things if my purpose is feeling off or the people score is low around team, that may help me figure out who the next natural conversation is with. I can also think about having this conversation with other people. So if I'm feeling low in some areas, maybe my family or maybe my team are as well. So I could plan to have a check in with myself, with my family, with my team, so that we could have some honest conversation about how we're doing and some actually empowering conversation. It's always fascinating to me once I ask this question out loud with other people. It's amazing how the energy can shift in a relationship. So, is that helpful? Are those some connecting to
Yeah.
what you were asking? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Thank you. And you know what? Truly, if people have questions, I know you've got a slide that has all your contact
Mhm.
information on it too. People can, definitely the resources of the book of the Peace Index and kind of digging in a little deeper. And then because something might be a little personal for someone to share in an
Oh,
open forum, that
for
they can
sure.
reach out to you and connect with you to say, for questions and how to get some further information of what to do for sure.
Yes, I actually did this last week live with a group of people, and one of the women who was in the audience I said afterwards, I just got so uncomfortable at our table groups. I started feeling like I didn't have an answer. I'm like, that's totally normal. And we agreed we would talk about it later. So
Yeah.
if you're feeling like that, here's my email, and you're welcome to reach out. I love to answer questions about this stuff. In fact, I never get tired of talking about it. So if what we've talked about has disturbed the surface tension a little bit, take heart. I feel that too. So please feel free to reach out with any questions you may have. If something I said was not clear, happy to be a resource for sure.
And we did have someone say, thank you, Anne, that said, no questions, but I really appreciate your authenticity. So,
Oh, thank you.
yeah. Yeah, so that is,
Thank you.
yeah, that's awesome for sure. So yeah, well, thank you, and definitely, like I said, it'd be, if anybody does have any additional questions, to be able to reach out to her, and it's definitely a great reset for the end of the year here before we start into 2025, and people can identify the areas that they may need to work on, or where they are seeing a little lack that they can kind of address for the new year 2025. You already did the exercise of my New Year's resolution, Amy, so thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. And Alice, you were saying there are places you can go to learn more. So there's a book that's a quick, easy read. There's also a free assessment you can take, and I've included that link. Alice was kind to reference that. So you can take a free Peace Index assessment and learn a little bit more about it if that's your jam. I love taking assessments. Some people hate it. So that is something that you're welcome to do. And please do reach out if I can be a resource for sure and answer
Perfect.
questions.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us today for our Wednesday webinar series, the last Wednesday webinars of 2024. A little information about who we are. Talent Connections is a human resources executive search and consulting firm in Atlanta. We were founded in 1999, so we're celebrating our 25th anniversary next year. To find out more, you can see our website is www.talentconnections.net. We also, you'll find our sister company, Career Spa, provides career transition and coaching services tailored to each individual, helping you discover your career path and secure an advantage in this evolving job market. And that website is on there as well. The activity code for this webinar is 24-WRZR2, and this has been approved for a professional development credit for recertification through SHRM. Please be sure to note the activity ID number on your recertification application form. Remember to mark your calendars for our next Wednesday webinar, which will actually be Wednesday, January 22nd. We've moved it down a little bit later on in the month to get everybody time to come back to work, and it's at the same time of 12 to 1 Eastern time as well. We did have another person that said to Amy, said thank you so much. So
You are so welcome.
yeah, so thank you, Amy, so much. We really appreciate your time, and everyone have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.